matters of logistics have us celebrating All Saints Sunday a week earlier than other churches. If you happen to go to Trinity Episcopal next week on the other side of Water Street, they'll be doing the things that we're doing today, lighting candles, ringing bells, remembering those who have died. Ordinarily on All Saints Sunday, the text deals explicitly with heartbreak or death. Ordinarily, we might hear a story about a time Jesus was on a mountain and people came to him, people who had nothing, people who were hopeless. And Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the heartbroken, those who mourn, for you will be comforted." And maybe if we heard this, just like those first crowds, we would feel a little bit of balm on the wounds that all of us have. Last year, when we celebrated All Saints Sunday, we did it on the right Sunday. So our text was the raising of Lazarus, Jesus' friend. Lazarus is ill, and Lazarus' sister, Martha, sends word to Jesus, who's in another city. "Come quickly, Lazarus is sick." But Jesus doesn't come quickly. He delays. He waits a couple days, and Lazarus dies. And just as Jesus is about to arrive in the village where Lazarus lived, Martha meets him at the gate. And her hair is unwashed, and she's crying, and her face is red, and she says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Truer words have never been spoken. "Lord, if you had been here, this would not have happened, but you weren't here." And Jesus keeps walking into the village, and he sees all the people crying. And Jesus starts crying too. Beautiful stories for us to hold on a day like today when we are crying as well. But on this not really All Saints Sunday, I just took the text that was given to us in our narrative lectionary, and I thought, it must apply to this day. Because the message of the Bible is so great that it has to be relevant. It's that heavy. It needs to encounter the peaks and valleys of life if it's the real thing. So, our story today is about death, the death of a little baby, but we'll get to that a little later, because it's never really seemed as if that is the focus of this story. This story has always seemed to be about the brilliance or wisdom of Solomon. It's kind of just like a legendary story. Maybe you've heard one of these before. You know so-and-so? He's like a genius. So the night before his SAT, there's a party, and he decides he's going to go to the party and stay just for a little bit, but the party's a ton of fun. So he starts dancing and having fun, and he loses track of time, and it's 3 a.m. by the time the party ends, and the people at the party want to go out for breakfast, so they head to one of those all-night breakfast places, and they sit in a booth, and they have big piles of pancakes and sausages, and then at 5:30, his alarm goes off, and he thinks, "What is that for?" "That's when I was supposed to wake up," he recalls. "I have to take the test." So he slugs down the rest of his coffee, goes home, takes a shower, shows up for the SAT after being awake all night, takes the test. A couple weeks later, the results arrive in the mail. Perfect score. You know people like that. You can add it to the other stories we have about this guy, how in the Prep Bowl championship, second quarter, he sprains his ankle. Has to get help to the locker room. The trainers wrap it up, and he hobbles back in there for the fourth quarter. They get the ball down by 4 with a minute and a half left. He marches the team down the field, back corner of the end zone, touchdown pass, time expires. He's a legend, he's a legend, he's a legend, and we all talk about him. A genius, a competitor, and wise. A good student. As he gets older, he becomes a judge. And one day, in his courtroom, 2 women appear before him. A custody case. Both of the women say that the baby belongs to them. "Okay," he says, "cut the baby down the middle. You can each have half of them." And of course, the mom who really loves the baby objects. She says, no, let the other woman have him. And we tell this story about this man, his legendary wisdom. And we talk about him. Biographies are written, his brilliance and riches and wisdom, his 4 wives. Buildings are named after him. Maybe he contributed for the construction of this church 50 years ago. A legendary figure, much like King Solomon, let's say. But on this morning, in this story, no one really talks much about the other woman who appeared in court. The other prostitute, the woman who had lost her baby. She would come home every night and sleep next to that baby. He was all that she had. Every other aspect of her life had been transactional at best or abusive at worst. From the time she was a little girl, her parents, the men down the street, and now the men she serviced, a life totally absent of the little graces and kindness that make life worth living. Until she found herself in a hospital, pushing and screaming, and a baby came. And at first she was sure, that's it, I don't want to see him, take him away. But then the doctor put the baby in her arms, and she saw 2 little eyes staring back at her. And for the first time in her life, there was someone who loved her, who she could love back. So she spent all her time with that baby. As long as she held him, he didn't cry. And every night when she would have to leave and do that awful work, she would put the baby to bed and tell the woman in the other apartment, keep an eye on him. And then she would come home at night and she would put her body next to the little body of that baby. And the little warmth and grace that was his body made her forget about every other body that she had been next to. Until that morning, 10:30. It's so late. Is he still sleeping? She thought. It was bright in the room, and there he was, lying next to her, as lifeless as the little dolls that she used to sleep next to when she was a little girl, hiding from the world. And that's it. You go through something like that, that's it. You don't care anymore. You can't care sometimes if you've gone through hell. Here's a real story. Tammy Charles never thought that she could have children. She'd had a series of medical problems, and at 35 years old, she was dating a jazz musician named Donnie, and she was planning to have a hysterectomy. But a couple weeks before the surgery was scheduled, Tammy and Donnie found out that they were pregnant, and they had a little boy, a son named Seven, and he was born with a tethered spinal cord and an imperforate anus, and he had to wear a colostomy bag from birth, and in his little life he had 26 surgeries. Eventually the colostomy bag was removed, but there was still leakage, and Seven smelled, and he went to school, and he was teased and bullied. And then one day when he was 10 years old and his mom was doing groceries and his dad was singing with the church choir, Seven walked into his bedroom and hanged himself. And his mom, Tammy, afterward, she said that she lost a few things when her son died. She said, first, I lost my living, breathing son. Everyone knows that. I lost my son. But second, when you have a kid, you realize you will never lose the ability to worry. But that was taken from me too. Since my little boy died, I haven't worried about a thing. And I don't mean anything. I don't care whether my shoes are tied, whether someone likes me. I don't care how the food I'm eating tastes. I don't care about anything. Sometimes when you go through hell like that, you stop caring. So the behavior of this other woman in our story, this woman standing before King Solomon, her carelessness, I don't care if this baby is cut in two, I don't care if he dies, I don't care if I die, I don't care about anything. Sometimes that's what happens when life does its absolute worst to you. When someone that you love more than life itself dies, you just stop caring. And it's a sad thing that in the midst of this story, it is Solomon's supposed wisdom that is the big takeaway. Solomon's wisdom. Good for you, Solomon. You're so smart. You're so wise. You executed justice. You and your wisdom. How about that? What is justice? We brought him to justice. Powerful people proclaim before they inflict pain on people who probably deserve it. Justice. What is justice? I don't know what it is, and there's probably more nuance to justice than I'm describing it here. Justice. What is justice? Death? We're all going to die. That's just how it is. Life's justice. There's no use crying about it. Maybe wisdom simply acknowledges this, that we're all going to die. And then wisdom doesn't get all bent out of shape when sad things happen. It remains calm and poised like Solomon before these two women today. I hate that. Imagine if someone came into our church today and saw all those candles, heard all those names, felt all these tears, and then walked up to this pulpit and told you, this is how life goes. People just die. Get on with your lives. Here's your check. Don't ever come back here. That cold, impartial, detached wisdom. Maybe it'll give you a perfect SAT score. Maybe it'll give you wealth and fame. Solomon had it all. Wealth and fame and greatness, but he was so detached from real life, from heartbreak maybe, from tears, that Solomon fell away from God. And that was it. Don't be wise like this. Don't be like Solomon. Instead, let us cry together. Weep warm tears together. Let us weep next to a woman who would wake up next to a baby who is no longer breathing. Let us weep next to Tammy Charles, who misses her little boy 7 every day. Let us weep together for all these lives. And let us weep with God, who did not come into the world to be wise, but just to be with us. To weep with Mary and Martha, to say, blessed are those who mourn, for you will be comforted.